Hey guys, welcome to The Cutting Edge with G Money, and welcome to our new format. We're doing video going forward, and to kick off the new format, we have no better guest than my very good friend, the creator of the Twin Flames collection, one of the co-founders of Quantum Gallery, and great friend, huge NFT advocate, Justin Aversano. Justin, what's going on? How are you?
Dude, it's such a pleasure to be here. Our journey has been so far and long this year, and I'm excited that you're building your own platform and social media in a way where you're going to be your own publishing company. I think it's really cool and fun, and I get to be one of the first to be on video with you.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on. And it's funny because you're so deep in the space, I'm so deep in the space that I assume that everybody knows who you are. And it's funny when I meet people that I'm like, oh yeah, and I tell them your story, and they're like, especially I think as I'm talking more and more to people outside of the space, and yours is like one of the best stories I love telling because I think that it really is a really good testament to like how powerful NFTs actually are, right? So, I'd love to hear it from your point of view because I've told it plenty of times from my point of view, and I'd love to hear like your genesis into the space and how that started and how you kind of ended up here and going down the rabbit hole.
Cool. I'm just going to go off on a crazy free associated 5-10 minutes of talking then.
Yeah.
Um, so it really all started at the beginning of this year. Obviously, everyone was on Clubhouse, nerding out during the pandemic and really seeking human connection and conversation. And that app really just allowed us all to communicate and connect and share and participate in each other's art and also learning about tech. And I feel like a lot of artists this year alone found like a connection and brotherhood to each other, building a community of art. And at the same time, the tech people were also doing that, and for some rooms bled together, and these conversations around NFTs started happening. So, I was pretty early in Clubhouse, and we had a bunch of conversations there, learning about NFTs. There's NFT experts, NFT conversations. Obviously, the Beeple sales really brought a lot of attention to things. And so, it was time for me to like, hey, all right, I'm going to see what NFTs are about. And then I tried using Raribles for the first time, and I really didn't work out for me. And I felt really upset at it because it stole the money in my bank. And at the time, I only had like $250 in my bank. And like, it was costing me $60. So like, for me, that was like 4 meals that week. And I was like, what the hell is this scam? Like, I don't like this. This is bullshit. And so, meeting you and also meeting Alex Mesmesh, who does Try Showtime, Alex really inspired me to try again and not just brush it aside because this is revolutionary technology. And he actually held my hand to make a MetaMask and build an OpenSea account. And then having conversations with you before I even minted anything, I was prepared to mint, but I wasn't ready to mint yet. And meeting you, through Instagram, through Kenny Schechter's simple post about a punk ape sale, and me being curious and also advantageous to connect with someone like you who spends money like that, because at the end of the day, artists need patrons, and I was seeking you out as a patron to connect. And so we connected and had a phone call for an hour. As I was leaving the post office dropping off books that I was shipping out of Twin Flames, you and I had a fun hour conversation. And, without you being so brutally honest with me about you not wanting to buy my set for $100,000, because at that time, my physical pieces were selling for $1,000 each. And, I was sitting on Twin Flames for at least 2 years, trying to sell it to museums, trying to sell it to tech companies, trying to find a home for it, because I was in so much debt at the time for making the project. And it was really coming back to me. And I was, there was a fire under my ass to really hustle and make moves, or else it just puts me in a bad place. So I wanted to connect with you because I saw that you bought a JPEG, and at that time I really didn't understand why people would be buying JPEGs and not want these physical things that an artist had made that like takes up a whole wall or gallery, right? So, you and I had a conversation, and instead of buying the physical thing for this one price, you inspired me to break it down to pieces and let go of the attachment to my, obsession to keep it whole, right, in the physical sense. And NFTs, your insight into NFTs led me to break it down into the digital asset, which allowed me to share that with 100 people versus one institution. And I think that conversation alone changed my life and the course of history of what we're doing in photography. So
Yeah, and
so
I want to stop you right there because you've been like obviously in your journey. Like I think I played a decent role in it, but I also want to express how important of a role you played in my journey, right? Because like I remember in that first phone conversation you had, you were like, yeah, like I don't know how can I help you, like I can get you into these artist focused clubhouse rooms, and you can talk about NFTs and bring them bring the art world into them. And I remember you would like send me messages, be like, yo, like there's this good clubhouse, you should come on. And people were talking about NFTs, and it was very much like helping each other too, right? Because I was very much building my brand and like trying to get my voice out there, and you were just trying to understand it, right? And here I was, somebody that like was willing to take the time to talk to you. But I think one of the things that really drew me to also want to help you is, and this has definitely become very like everybody understands this at this point, is like you want to help people, right? Like you're not in this just for yourself. Like you like love that connection. Like one of the things I love about hanging out with you is just how much you like connecting in person, right? Like you're just like, yo, like what are you doing tonight? Like let's just chill and like walk around the city, and like we've done that a couple times already. And like I think that says something about you as a person and why like these opportunities really open themselves up for you, because I think that like you were open to making that happen.
And at the end of the day, it's like, what is life? If you can see this in my portraiture, it's like I like people, I like connecting, I like creating, and I think the more you connect with those people, the more you create, the more relationships build, the more things you can build. And I think just us having that one call led to a whole universe unfolding, and so many people entering our lives. Like you've introduced me to so many people that help elevate my career in a sense where when like you said, when I introduced you to people on Clubhouse, it was simply to connect the art world with the tech world, to really create a dialogue and let go of the skepticism the art world had with NFTs and really embrace it, because it's really to protect the artist and work for the artist. And this technology just brings so much abundance to so many people. And like people like you are ready to give the abundance to people, and you just don't know who or how yet. So for me, even at the parties we went to in NFT NYC, it was all about, hey, did you meet Ben? Did you meet John? Like, I think as simple as being a person at a party and like looking to the person to your right and looking to the person to your left and saying, hey, do you know this person? And then that conversation starting is ultimately one of my favorite things to do in the world. Just like, and that's connecting, right? That's connecting people, because at the end of the day, I understand when people connect, culture is created, and those people can work together to create new things. And all I care about is creating new things that really help humanity flourish.
Right. And there's like it's so, I'm glad you brought this up organically, because I definitely wanted to talk about it, because I think that leads to the number one thing. Like when creators are coming into the space and they're like, hey, like can you help me, right? Like what can you do? And I tell them I'm like community, right? Like I always point to you as like the great example of like build a community around your collectors, build a community around your work. Literally just look at what Justin has done, and how quickly he's been able to build a really really tight knit close community where like I know a lot of the other collectors just because hanging out with you while you're hanging out with them, we all get to know each other, right? Like what, I guess, for the creators out there, people that are coming new to the space, what kind of advice would you give them for like how do you go about building that community in crypto, coming into Twitter and a form that wasn't really native to you, right? Because like I assume that as a photographer you've been taught Instagram, right? And I remember when we were talking, you had, I think, maybe like over 10,000 followers on Instagram, and you might have had like 500 followers on Twitter. Like
a less, like 100.
yeah, and like what was that like? And like what advice do you have for for people getting into the space that want to be that community builder themselves?
I think you really have to contribute more than just what you create. It's not just the art I make, it's also the relationships you make. And I think both of those things are extremely important. It's both the talent you have as an artist, the authenticity of what you create and share into the space, and also the relationships and the quality of relationships you foster and getting to know people. And as simple as commenting or liking or just being consistent and keep showing up. I think the key word is showing up for the collectors or and other artists, and just keep at it, because one conversation is great, but like 10 can really build a bond and inspire you to do a new project. Like we've had conversations that, you know, we were joking around like, oh, let's do a whole project of photographing CryptoPunks, right? And it turned out to me photographing you in Miami with your Punks mask on for my new project, and it was just a joke at the time, but then it became a reality. And it's like conversations like that, conversations like you and acknowledging you saying, "Oh, I want to put CryptoPunks in the museum," in those clubhouse talks, and
Yeah.
like me
Well,
me taking that seriously and seeing like my opportunity to say, "Hey, I run Save Art Space. I can actually do that, but it's not a museum; it's a public art space. So why don't we just start in the public and then branch out to the world and share it with the world, because it is decentralized." And it's
right.
those type of conversations that really lead to those greater projects.
Right. And to build on that, right? Like I remember, when, we had that 1 hour conversation and you were a stranger and I was like, all right, I'm gonna hear from this guy in like 2 or 3 weeks. Hopefully he sold his artwork and like hopefully like he comes down into the space. And you called me, I think was it 2 days later, 3 days later? And you
Probably
were
the
like,
next day, the next
yeah,
morning.
and you were literally like, dude, I sold out. Thank you so much. And then you referenced that conversation about me wanting to get punks on in museums, and you were like, and that's when you told me about Save Art Space. You're like, why don't we put them on billboards? And I was like, all right, like that's a really cool idea. Like, let's do it. And that I think speaks to what you were just saying, right? Where it's like you gave that back like unconditionally, right? And by doing that and like doing something for the community that didn't necessarily, you didn't even own a punk at the time, that didn't directly benefit you.
It made it
You
more expensive for me.
but you were able to benefit more in the long run, right? Where it's like, you did something very altruistic for the punk community, and a lot of your early collectors ended up becoming punks, right? Because of what you were able to do.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, those conversations inspired me, and I took it to heart, and I knew what I could do just beyond the means of my photo making. And I think really to get far in the space as a cultural community leader is not just think about the photographs you're minting and selling. It's really how do you contribute at a greater length to what that transcends the art you're sharing at the end of the day and selling. So, by doing what we're doing with the punks and really building with the punks and asking permission from Matt and John and like really taking it to the next level and involving everyone, because everyone was excited to get their punks on billboards in 3 different cities month after month. And then now we're doing one with Art Blocks in January in San Francisco, and we're working with a youth group of young girls to show alongside Tyler Hobbs and Eric and all those artists. So it's like, how do you keep pushing the bar of selflessness through the art while maintaining an artistic integrity for yourself? So I think the more you do for the community, treat the world like it's a nonprofit. What are you passionate about? For me, it's public art, and that's just like my superpower. So naturally, I would use my connections and experience to promote the NFT space and connect people how I've been connecting people since 2015 with Save Art Space. So, everyone has it in them. Something other than what they are creating can also be a catalyst to building community.
Right. Yeah, no, again, like I can't stress this enough. I think you are the best community builder in the space, which is why, and I know we discussed this early on, like quantum was something we started discussing, I think 2 or 3 weeks after you got into the space, right?
Before the Billboard show.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, before even the billboards, we were discussing what quantum might look like and how we could partner and work together. I think we both saw the hustle that each of the other person has, and we were like, yeah, like there has to be a way to work together. And luckily enough, we had that opportunity starting a couple months ago, right, with Quantum. And like, you know, in your own words, I have my words of describing it, but like, tell us a little bit about Quantum and what you guys are doing there.
Well, I would like to start how it was pretty much originated through our phone calls, like when we kept catching up beyond selling the Twin Flames and beyond the Punks billboards. Like we called each other and we were like, yo, how do we do this for more artists? How do we uplift more artists? How do we like curate quality work? Like we know people in the space, you know, whether it's Frank Ape or Val or everyone originally we had on that funny Squarespace template we made for Quantum Space Gallery, and it was just came naturally, like Quantum Space. And I'll tell you the meaning behind Quantum in a little bit, but it just goes to show, like, I was treating that moment like I was Andy Warhol and you were Tony Schiafarazzi, and you're like, you're the gallerist, I'm the artist, like we were fucking like, you're the dealer, like we were like playing off each other like they might have been in those days in the 80s. So for me, like that's what was inspiring me, because I'm such a nerd in art history, and like it felt like that our energy was like reviving that time. So, you know, we were nerding out. We were like, all right, you go find some artists, I'll go find some artists, let's make a template. And then Quantum Space was born. But then it really didn't go anywhere because like we were so focused on building our brands. But then it was something that always was like at the back of my mind. I think now is a whole fucking movement that was generated before we even knew where we were going.
Right. And you know, it's funny too, because I think, you know, we started there with the Quantum Space. And then like to your point is like we were each focused on other things, right, at the time. And in between those, I remember like after you started blowing up, a lot more NFT photographers started coming into the space, and people would be like, "What do you think of this?" And really, it started becoming. I would message you, and I'd be like, "Yo, what do you think of this? What do you think of this photographer?" And you would give me your opinion, and that would be like my decision whether to buy or sell, right? Like if Justin likes it, like Justin is my photography guy. If he likes it, like that's the seal of approval for
That's
me,
too
right?
much power.
But you know, but it's true, right? And then like as we're thinking about it, and I know we had brief conversations around this, where it was like, okay, like you obviously now have this curatorial piece to what you were doing, right? Where you could decide like, oh, like this is good or this is bad in the photography space because you made a name for yourself, and now you're, you know, one of the guys in the space. And I think that that's really where the genesis of Quantum in its current form really started, right? Like I'm sure I wasn't the only person hitting you up on stuff, that a lot of people were hitting you up for your opinion. And I think that that's really like the beauty of what you guys are building as a platform there.
Yeah, and I think it really came out of us having that conversation, and then that big group call with Flamingo that asked me like, "Hey, what photography should we collect?" And then in that whole conversation turned into, "Hey, you know, no, don't worry about what we should collect. Let's worry about what we should build." And I think at the end of the day, community, you need to be building platforms and opportunities. And I think if you want to be a community builder and not just a participant, you got to think building, laying down infrastructure, right? For tech or art or movements or just supporting other artists, collectives, like it could be simple like that. Like also with a DAO, and we could talk about that in a bit. But I think people like yourself, Flamingo, even 6529, were the people who really pushed me to like, hey, Justin, like knock some sense into me. Like you got to be the guy that builds something to like lead photographers, like in a way like how Eric Snowfro does art blocks. And I really respect and look up to him as a role model to me into who I want to be in this space, because he's basically built an empire and gave a whole life force to generative art. And like, you know, he's someone who's a great ally that, you know, I wanted to work with originally, and I'm grateful now he's going to be participating in our advisory. So it all comes full circle, you know, like we're all here to work together. We're all allies. We're all trying to build towards the same thing. And, you know, there's just so much respect in the space. And, you know, if I hadn't had built Quantum, someone else would. And, you know, at the end of the day, it says, I just want to build.
So I guess one of the things we touched upon a little bit, you know, Quantum is a platform that is basically a curation platform for photographers to kind of release their projects and their projects on the platform. Tell me about the projects that have been released so far. I mean, they've been selling out like very quickly. So I really commend you on that. And what do you have coming for us down the pipeline?
Great. Well, we have an amazing curator, Chris Graves, who reached out to me earlier this year with his project, the Testament Project. And it's funny because Chris has always been a hero of mine in the art world, and for someone like him to hit me up and connect with me, like, changed my life in the respect of who I was in the art world. And without him being a friend, you know, I don't know if we'd be here today with Quantum, because he's like the curator and he's someone I trust because he has a book publishing company for photography. He's in museums. He works every day in the art world. So like having his support and his friendship really changed how I thought about the space and how we could bring in and onboard new photographers who would do so well with the quality of work they've been making for their whole life. And I think that's the testament of what Quantum is onboarding quality and bringing new light to photographers who are afraid of but are ready to enter the space, and let us be their shepherds and share in the NFT space what quality photography is, with narrative and cohesiveness and collections and all these elements that really make what is good photography. For me, it's what is the story, what is the image quality, what is the all these different elements combined to really make you feel something, versus just an Instagram photo you've seen a million times, or a beach photo. Like, not to knock any of those photographers, but it's like there's something more profound than the image itself that the story tells you with just one look of
Right.
all the photos, right?
Right. Yeah. And so you guys have had three drops so far, or is it two?
So we've dropped Amy Elkins was our first drop with the cyanotypes of her self-portraits from the first day of the pandemic that she got COVID up until the last day where she got the vaccine, which I think is a brilliant concept when you're shooting yourself every day. And the catalyst for that project was getting COVID and then ending it with getting a vaccine. And I think that's the type of thought process that intrigues me. And that to me is what art is like, how do you see life and bridge that with the art you're making and the ideas, and tell a story and see the changes every day in her case. And then we practice working with estates. So the second launch was the Rizzo estate with Alberto Rizzo's Genesis project of 100. And so it's all fashion photography and stuff from Vogue. And we're just really testing the waters, what it would be like to work with an estate and an archive. So I really appreciated that, because we're not only working with contemporary photographers that are being born and bred in the blockchain space, but also have to respect and honor the history of photography. And I'm passionate about photography and the history, like Ansel Adams you brought up earlier. It would be a blessing to mint his work on Quantum and really share the love and energy that he poured in his photographs, and us be the people who really share that with the world is something that's on my mind every day, of how to make that happen. The third day was Chris Graves with a Dutch auction, and it was one of his new projects, Privileged Mediocrity, which there was only 50 of. The week thereafter was the New Yorker series by Sally Davies, which I really love. It's portraits of people in New York, in their homes, to really get an environmental sense of what people live like in the city, whether they're rich or poor, or grunge or exquisite. It's like all different walks of life through these photos, through this book she's made. And tomorrow is a new drop, Thursday, November 18th, Joey L, of his 11 years in Ethiopia and the people and places that he's experienced, and in respect to what's going on there, and the support he's bringing with his art, with his philanthropic um, energy to give back to the community. And all of our drops have a philanthropic element, where 2.5% of all sales go to a charity of the artist's choice. Because when you look at photography, you're looking at evidence, right? There's evidence of the thing you're looking at. And why do photographers make art? It's because they're seeing something. And I think whatever you're making photos of, there's a charitable effort that goes to what you're making, whether it's giving back to African aid, or giving money towards vaccine things, or like mental health awareness. It could be any of these things that relate to the photographs. And I think photography has always been a great communicator, and hopefully with us we could be a great fundraiser for the same exact reasons.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that in 1 second. The one thing, the first question I have is, how often will the drops be?
So we've decided to do a season 1 and take a break in April. So every Thursday we're having a curated drop, same time. For Black Friday of this month, because Thanksgiving's on the 20 something on the Thursday, we decided, because it's Julie Blackman, instead of releasing it on Thanksgiving where everyone's with their family, and we don't want to make people ape when they're with their family, so we thought Black Friday for Julie Blackman was a fun and clever way to have her drop of her big project, of the family. And she's one of the greatest contemporary photographers in the art world, and it's really an honor to have her on Quantum. And she's going to just be a whole use case of fine art photographers at the top tier level to be on with us, working with us.
With regards to what Art Blocks was able to do for generative art. And I bring this up over and over again, is that really, like, Quantum will be able to do for photography, right? Because like a lot of the things, like generative art is not a new genre, right? It's been around for decades. One of the problems with generative art up until blockchain and, let's say, what Art Blocks was able to do, where like this is the authorized run, right? Is, hey, like, if I was an artist, obviously if you run an algorithm to develop some sort of generative art, you can run it infinity times, right? So I can tell you, oh, I'm only going to run it 100 times, but if I run it 10,000 times, you generally don't know in the traditional sense, right? And I think that that's what Art Block's real secret sauce was, is being able to give a generative artist that platform where it's like, okay, there's only going to be 100 copies of this, and you can figure out your rarity based on those 100, right? And I think the same type of issues exist for photography in the real world, where it's like, oh, I can sell you a print, right? But you don't know if I'm making 100 prints or one print or 10 print, right? So to me, it's like those are the same types of things that exist in the generative art space that also exist for the photography, right? Along with the fact that, photographs like display really well on like LCD TVs, right? So it's like, as we're going to a more digital format, like, of course, like lifelike photography is going to be great, right? So like that to me has been super exciting about what you guys are working on too, is like not only like developing that curatorial board to kind of be like, hey, these are the photographers that you should be looking out for, but also, kind of giving that I don't want to call it exactly rarity, but like, just knowing that there's only a certain amount that exists per collection, right? And I think that speaks to something that you understood really early on, of, you made 100, you had 100 of the Twin Flames, and you didn't go out with another project right away, right? Like, what was going through your mind at that point? That, because I've seen it a lot in the space where people sell out real quick and they're like, okay, I want to make more. And then it kind of dilutes like their work going forward. What was it that you saw that made you kind of be very cognizant of that and like run with it?
So I'm very, disciplined when it comes to my artistic practice, and I only really work on one major project, like in themes. I don't really make just random projects or singular works. I work in major themes that relate to, different um, inspirations in my life, whether it comes from a loss of a family member or something deep and traumatic. It really comes in a place where it's very sacred, and I treat the project very serious. But I have so much fun when I'm creating it. But the seriousness of the conceptual process is what makes me very disciplined, in the sense of, when I focus on Twin Flames, like I've been working on it since 2017. I shot it for the entire year. That was all I thought about. That was all I focused on. And then I printed it in 2018 in the darkroom, being an artist, being a photographer, being an alchemist in the darkroom, and then self-publishing a book with the help of one of the twins in the project, who's a book publisher. So, and then having an exhibition at Super Chief really was my main focus. So I built that like focus on how to not only display the work, but to think about the work, to live with the work. And naturally, when NFTs and blockchain came along, it was like, oh, I'm just gonna put Twin Flames up because I've been working on this for so long and it's readily available. And once it was up and sold out, I also noticed the behavior of artists and the market itself was, they release a project and then instantly the floor goes down and like no one hears from it again. And for me, it was like, this is my art, this is my life, like this is something I don't want to treat like that. So I've taken so much great care of the secondary. I've connected with collectors. I've brokered a lot of sales because I don't want to see my art just fall off a cliff. I really want to upkeep it to a place where it becomes self-sustainable, and that's how I treat my art because, it creates insecurity and it creates like sadness to see your art fall when it comes from a sacred, gentle place in my soul. So for me, it was like I understood the responsibility and the accountability to take care and not release a new project until next year. And I feel like a year is enough time to really build with the project, get it into museums, get it into Christie's and Sotheby's, and build a name for itself and the brand and even like a community behind it, to the point where now I don't even have to worry about making sales because my focus now at the end of this year, after Christie's selling earlier last month, and I made a promise to myself was, hey, Justin, it's time to stop focusing on sales and promotion and start getting back in the creative flow, because there's a balance when it comes to these sorts of projects and this type of commitment is create, market, promote, sell. And now it's back to where I was in the studio last night making silk screens for Smoke and Mirrors. So, and I can't tell you enough how great just getting dirty in the paint made me feel. It made me feel like I took a bath of consciousness, just like cleansed my soul of all the sales and promotion. And now I'm back into creative alignment. And I feel like I needed to get to the place where it felt so good to make art again. And now I could focus on that and not even worry about sales or the floor dipping or whatever. It's like, it's irrelevant now. It's like, it's at a 200 ETH floor. And if it goes down to 100, that's fine. That's still a lot. And so I recognize that, I accept it, and now it's time to focus and prepare for 2022 with Smoke and Mirrors.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate you on the Christie sale. Like that lot that you sold there was the lot that you originally wanted to sell to me on the first conversation that we had. And that day I wrote a tweet thread about it, about how happy I was that I didn't buy it, because I can only imagine. Like what would the NFT world be like without Justin Aversano if I just gave you that 100,000 right then and there and you didn't go down the NFT rabbit hole. I can't imagine that. Like you not being part of this space is a reality that I don't want to be a part of.
Well, it's we're all aligned, and everything unfolds as it has to. And I believe in the flow. Go with the flow and trust you and trust just what the decisions that were made. And because of you saying no, it pushed me to the point where it exceeded all of our expectations, and now we're building businesses and corporations because of it, which is
Yeah,
nuts.
dude, I just want to give you the plug. Like, you outsold Ansel Adams at Christie's last month, right? Like, and that is a feat to be proud of, and that's I commend you for that, and applaud you. And I feel like I'm like a parent that's like very happy, like that their child's doing great in school, but like I'm so happy to be a part of your journey.
I've referred to you earlier today at a meeting as you as one of my archangels, like my art angel, but archangel like Raphael. Like, you're there, you're meant to kick my ass to put me in the right direction, and have fun. Most importantly.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, right? And like, I guess one of the things that like comes to mind when as you were describing your process right now and how you're kind of getting back into creator mode now to start the next year, like what have you learned from the process that changed completely? Like, how did that change your approach to the space? You've been now you're approaching a year. Like, how has your approach changed because of your involvement in the NFT space?
Approach to what?
To creating.
There's so much more gratitude, because pre NFTs, all I was doing was creating, to the point where I was kind of like, numb to just the great feelings of the cathartic energy of creating, because it became like a job, it became my life, it became a habit. And now not creating and focused on selling and like building abundance and supporting other photographers and artists in the space and connecting with fund managers. Like I never in my life thought I'd be, working with VCs, and now all my art is landing in their vaults. And then now I'm so heavily induced in the selling and promoting where I'm kind of getting numb to that. And now I need my cathartic release in creating, and just fucking silk screening last night was like the love energy shining through my body and like I said, cleansing me of all this work I've been doing. And now I'm like coming back to that place of appreciation and gratitude just by simply with my brush strokes and having fun in the studio again.
That's incredible. Yeah. And what would you say, what are the top 3 things you've learned over the past year that you would share with creators as they're coming into the space?
I would say be bold, be yourself. Don't create things that you think the audience wants, but create things that you authentically or originally created. Like I didn't animate any of my photos. I didn't change up anything that I've been doing because I think it would have done better in the space. It was just like always be yourself. Don't be afraid to reach out to people like G Money or anyone else that you look up to in the space. Build a relationship with them. Contribute as much as you can. Greater than your art is the most important thing, I think. What gave me my success. Being selfless in your energy and output, but also making sure you're sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for that. Like, I think that it's, I get hit up by a lot of people as well, being like, oh, what should I be doing? And, one of the things I always tell them is like, just be authentic, be as true to who you are as you can, because you will find your audience at some point. There's 6 billion people, or maybe probably more at this point on the planet. And, you're going to find your tribe sooner or later. Right. I want to touch for a second upon the Twitter spaces that we had yesterday. And, we discussed provenance and how important that is. And, I know when you came into the space, you said you messed around with Rarible at first, then you did OpenSea. And, one of the things, right, is like your wallet is not attributed to that drop. Is there something that Quantum is doing with regards to that for these artists so that, are they minting on the Quantum contract, or are they minting on their own?
They're minting through Quantum,
Okay.
but they have their own name attached to it.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. And like, I guess you as a creator, again, as you came into the space, I think when people come in, they're like, all right, I just need to understand the technology. And then as you start going down the rabbit hole, you're like, oh, wait, like this doesn't have the provenance that I want. And like, I've seen it time and time again where a creator comes in, they go in through like an easy route, like let's say an easier route, like an OpenSea, a Nifty, a Rarible. And then they realize, oh, wait, this isn't linked to my address, to me as a creator. How do I fix that? Right. And like, I know you've been very vocal on it because you've been working on it on your own for your contracts as well. And I wanted to know like what your thoughts were on that, and if you have like any advice for people as they come into the space with that, because I can speak at it from like the side of the collector, but I think it's really important to hear it from a creator's mouth.
Yeah. So I never actually minted anything on Raribles, and I'm thankful for that. I did mint Twin Flames on OpenSea, and my name is on there when you see it. Had I had the choice, if I had the knowledge I did today, if I was going to remint Twin Flames like earlier this year, I would have had a custom smart contract. I would have done it with my name, with Chip or Manifold or anyone, myself So, these are the lessons you learn, not being tech savvy and just being an artist and learning as you go. I kind of look at it like, OpenSea smart contracts, kind of like me using acrylic paint, and then, smoke and mirrors on my own custom Justin smart contract is like you moving into oil and working with those, with that technique. So for me, I look at these things like different brushes and paints. And so for me, that's my that's how I think about it. It's just,
Yeah,
and then you learn the technology and you're growing. So
I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, right? Because I agree with you. Like the provenance is still there. It's just like not directly under your name, right? But like it's definitely there. You know, Twin Flames is definitely a Justin Aversano project. But like, you know, as you evolve in the space, the techniques that you use, right, or the medium that you use changes over time. And I think that's a really good analogy that I haven't used before.
And I also think it's funny, right? Because there's a lot of FUD or, you know, dismissiveness around OpenSea shared contracts. And like my Twin Flames, aside from the Twin Flames 49, are 1155 OpenSea shared contract tokens. And it's the number one photography project in the space. So it kind of like breaks that whole taboo of, oh, you need this to be, you know, considered the best. But in my case, it's like I actually kind of broke those rules, and it's not about the token or the contract. It's about the reputation of the artist. And I guess that's what I'm confident in about this whole like argument is like, yeah, I did do that, but you know what? I think what matters most, and this is the whole conversation, is do you trust the artist? Do you trust the reputation? Or do you trust what this deployer says?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that like you kind of see it in the real world, right? Where it's like, oh, this artist had this period of time where they worked out of this gallery, or you know, they had this internship, right? Or like, you know, where they were working out of the studio, right? And I think you're gonna see this is like the digital equivalent of that.
Right.
You know, and I guess so. I guess while I have you here, obviously there's been a lot of talk about Quentin Tarantino and him releasing the Pulp Fiction stuff, wanting to do his secret network drop for NFTs, and Miramax sued him. I believe it was yesterday or the day before. As a creator, like, what are your thoughts on it, right? On that whole issue and how it's transpiring.
My thoughts, and I said this to the team that day that you were on the panel with them, and I wish I had a moment to say hi and had this conversation with Quentin, because I truly respect him as a filmmaker and an artist, and the stories he's told for the past 30 years. Um, for me, it would have been more like, instead of minting a script like it's some sort of memorabilia novelty item and avoid a lawsuit, you know, had he had the rights to usage of his own filmmaking that he signed away and probably will have the rights to in 2 to 3 to 10 years of whichever films he was talking about in the panel, I would have advised him to have done something creative and new, where, you know, whatever new film he was planning on doing, why not fractionalize the the process of, instead of taking it to Miramax or MGM or Hollywood, why don't you bring it to the people to raise 50 mil or however much money it costs to make a movie like he makes, and fractionalize it, and instead of giving shards, you give tickets. And for me, it's just, I'm having fun with this idea of, and I'm excited about seeing how, you know, feature films will live in the blockchain space and the Web3 universe of ownership for the people, by the people, and the creators who are making these movies to work with the people, right? And also the royalties of the crew and the models in the movies and all these different things. So I would have suggested, hey, like, whatever movie you're making, let's say he was making Reservoir Dogs for the first time, I would have been like, yo, if that's a $50 million budget, like, do a fucking party bid or some sort of other kind of fractionalization, and whoever puts in the money gets tickets, right? And then those tickets then would probably resell when they do put them in the major movie theaters or streaming, and then reward the people who supported you. It could be as simple as me buying a 0.5 ETH share and getting rewarded just for contributing. And thinking like that, I think, is a great way to think, especially until the technology comes when 2-hour movies can be on the blockchain in a seamless way, and thinking Web3 native instead of how we've been thinking in Web 1 or Web 2 or pre-web, with Hollywood and filmmaking. And I think these are the conversations these executives should be having, is how do you reward the participants, just like all these token drops have been doing. You know, ENS domain drop, probably just made everyone $30,000 to $100,000 richer just by using a gmoney.eth or justneversano.eth. And the more you think about wealth redistribution through simple activation and participation, you can't go wrong because everyone wins.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because I agree with all that you're saying with regards to novel ways to use NFTs and like, how do we push the space forward? Because that's very much what I am all about, right? Is like helping people understand that this is more than just JPEGs. This is literally everything, right? I think the one thing that I was kind of excited about for the Quentin Tarantino drop was that like, I feel like Pulp Fiction is such a huge piece of pop culture that getting that script, with his handwritten notes on it and like, seeing his like quirkiness like on the page would have been really cool, right? Like it's, as like a collector or, somebody that is a big Tarantino fan, I think like people would be interested in that.
For me, I felt like that could have been an eBay thing.
Yeah, perhaps, like I think
That
so.
that to me feels like eBay, whereas
But like,
I
like
don't know.
I'll say that, it's basically right. I think in this case, the NFT would be like the certificate of authenticity, right? Like if I got, and I don't know the mechanics of what he wanted to do, but let's say he sold the actual physical script along with like the digital version of it, is like, okay, that's like a proof of authenticity that goes with the physical item. And I know like I keep those two together personally, right? That's to me what I thought was cool about it. I didn't usually I tend to shy away from those type of things because I'm like, oh, like it seems like a little too gimmicky, but like I just think that Pulp Fiction is one of those like films that are just so culturally relevant that like I think like everyone there'd be value there, right? So
I mean,
get
it's on TV every night
like
on
probably every day.
HBO.
I think to me, like the most interesting, yeah, to me, the most interesting part of this entire situation is that it really seems like Miramax and maybe Hollywood at large, like the studios, might be really tone deaf as to what NFTs are actually about, right? And it's like the whole point of it is to empower the creator. And if you're telling me that like Quentin Tarantino signed away his rights to NFTs 20, 30 years before NFTs even existed, like that's kind of crazy, right? Like that to me is like where like there's a big disconnect, right? And I understand that these, Hollywood contracts are probably like half an inch to 1 inch thick, but like in reality, like it really doesn't vibe with the ethos of Pulp Fiction was something that came from his mind and he created it, and like why shouldn't he experience like a lot of that upside as the creator, right, in perpetuity, right? Because it was his blood and sweat that was on those pages, right?
Literally.
So yeah, so and I'm happy that you came on the show. I don't want to take up that much more of your time. Before we bounce, I just want to remind everyone about Quantum and all the cool things that you guys are doing over there. When is Smoke and Mirrors coming out? It's at some point early next year.
Well, I've been slowly stealth dropping the tarot scrolls, which are the silk screens, and those are one of 5 different variants. So there's 5 of the same image, but they're all different variants. One could be upside down, one could be sideways. Like they're all fun and playful. The 1 of 1 black and white coming out. I'm going for February 2nd, 2022. I might be a little delayed, but my goal is really February of 2022.
All right, cool. I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that we're super interested in it. But yeah, Justin, dude, thank you for taking the time. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they have any questions?
Twitter, just DM me.
All right, cool. Yeah, dude, thank you for taking the time. Like you become one of my closest friends in the space, and I really am so excited. Like we've known each other for less than a year, and I feel like we've accomplished so much together. I'm really, really looking forward to what the future holds for both of us.
Bro, year 1, man. I can't wait for 20 years down the line when we're just chilling and talking about these days.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks for the time, and everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Love you, bro.
Love you too.